Hello, this is Craig Lane with Health Alchemy, and we're looking at today out in nature in the office of the health professional, and we're kind of continuing this series of how do we get to be who we are. And so we're gonna go into how do you create your life? How did I become who I am? Who do you use for emulation? Who do you use for heroes? Who do you use to shape your own life? And so I used as many people as I could when I was young to help myself, give myself an example of who I want to be and how I want to be and operate. So this particular instance was when I was 21 years old. I broke my neck in a car accident and, should have died, according to the experts. And so how do we overcome the inevitable obstacles, injuries, accidents, traumas in our life? I don't know anyone that's had that sterilized of a life. I particularly had more accidents, illnesses, trauma, and whatnot than most people I know. And if you seek comfort, which we all do, we seek comfort and happiness, and you get it all the time, then you end up becoming soft. And if you have too much difficulty, then, obviously the edge is dying or, complete handicap. So somewhere in between those two is where, so my broken neck was, I became who I am by not listening to the doctor. That was the beginning of my healing journey. I wasn't even into health when I broke my neck. I'm 60 now, 39 years later. But I was surfing. So they tell me, you won't ever surf again. And I was 6 years into surfing. You might not walk normally. Disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer. And then we understand why that's so, because there's an insurance model and people don't want to get sued for false claims, especially the doctor. So by not listening to the doctor, not listening to my family, not listening to anyone, but listening to my own heart, which I call the heart gyroscope, I was able to get in the water 3.5 months after a life-threatening broken neck. And so people, everyone was against me. My friends drove me, and we didn't surf an extremely difficult wave, but I knew that I needed to do this. And they said, well, Craig, you could get hurt, you could die. And I said, here's how I became who I am. I would rather die doing something I love than sitting in a bed wishing I was doing it. Can you relate? And I went off the mainstream path after I broke my neck because the paramedics saved my life. But after that, after the halo brace was taken off 3 months later, the physical therapy was not acceptable, we'll just say. And so I turned to an out-of-the-box solution, which was yoga. I was going back to college for my architecture degree, and that little incident changed my whole life because that got me on that path of health and a slow transition out of architecture. Now, I didn't get fully into health for almost another 7 or 8 years later, but it did make an impact on me that, wow, I don't have to listen to these medical people because, wow, I just surfed and I did okay. And I started to see and I got angry when the doctor said he was hovering above me in the bed. I'm laying down and he's hovering above me saying, you'll never surf again. So he's in this superior position, we call it, the higher position. And I got angry. I never really understood why, because I was sort of angry about a lot of things when I was 21. I can't imagine being 21 years old now in 2025. I would be a raging anger guy. Just at what have the adults done to the world? And how did you let all these things happen? And look what I've inherited, So I was already angry. And so the anger was my way of pushing off what he would feel if he was in my position, i.e. the doctor. So if he was lying there, what he was actually saying was, I wouldn't surf again. I wouldn't do this. But I wasn't willing to take that projection of energy. And so by getting angry, I pushed it off. There's more skillful ways to do that I've learned over the last 39 years. But hey, if the weakest position to be is disempowered, depressed, right? So how do we get out of that? Well, that's Abraham Hicks's work. And so even anger, envy, and jealousy has more charge to it, if you really feel into it, than disempowered and depressed. So For today, then, we're just going to end it there on the first aspect of you become who you are. I became who I am by not listening to anyone else. Of course, you take counsel and you take consulting, but you don't base your life on what others think you should do. And if you're doing that, then it's okay to use groups. It's okay to get feedback and input, but make the decision your own. And your life might be a little more satisfying because health isn't about being should a certain way necessarily, but it's about aligning and surfing the laws of life. And that's what I'm here to teach you. And that's what's available to you. You don't even need me. If you just sit quietly and sincerely ask, you'll get your answers. That's the great news. That's what I do.